Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, once more. In peace there's nothing so becomes a man as modest stillness and humility. But when the blast of war blows in our ears, then imitate the actions of a tiger. Stiffen the sinews, summon up the blood. Disguise fair nature with hard-favoured rage. Set the teeth and stretch the nostrils wide, swirled with the wild and wasteful ocean. Welcome to you once again. Today I have some material from chapter 17 of Fragments, something from Meetings in Paris, and I have a lot of insights and results. The moon is full, and 2 nights ago, walking through my apartment late at night, an eerie glow shone on the floor of the living room. The moon was high and I couldn't quite see it, but the light was unmistakable, flowing ethereally across the floor. What is that light? I asked myself, what is it? Is it similar to the light of the spring, or the blue light of winter, or something from the autumn? What kind of light is moonlight? And once again the moon was overhead as I walked up the street the other day, and there it was in the sky. And I asked a friend, what is the difference between the light of the sun and the light of the moon? The light of the sun invites you to get up and go, even to the point where if you're not in the mood you feel a little guilty. But the moon isn't like that. It helps you drift away, as if your own energy is fading away and you are fading away with it into a pleasant dream where you no longer exist. In my younger days, we would often see the I.R.A, the Ireland Revolutionary Army. They were terrorists, but one couldn't help having some respect for people who fight for their country. They were men of their people after all, even if they weren't on our side. But I was stupefied to see that the very same people are inviting migrants to flood over Ireland. What happened to the war that they had fought? It's incomprehensible, and it's shocking, and that is the state of human beings. They are mad machines, and in their state of madness they destroy all the things that they love, and they love all the things that would destroy them. When Ouspensky's group was in trouble, he said, "We often spoke at the time of how we should feel in the midst of all this chaos if we had not got the system which was beginning more and more to be our own. Now we could not imagine how we could live without it and find our way in the labyrinth of all existing contradictions. And this world is extremely unstable, things just get destroyed and they're very, very distressing. But if you are properly trained and you carry out your disciplines every day, then there is hope. And whatever circumstances and traumas that we are born into, we can only do our best. If they were capable of doing something different, I suppose they would be doing something different. They just cannot. Let's travel now to Paris. Sir, I asked you last Thursday if there was a way to develop attention. You said that attention was measured in the degree that one remembers oneself. You told me to especially look into myself. I especially asked you that because I wasn't able to put my attention on the reading of the first series. During this week I understood that attention was where I was. As many eyes as there were, so many different attentions. I wanted to ask you if there was, for developing attention, only the method of I am, or are there other special methods? One thing I can tell you, methods do not exist. I do not know any, but I can explain now everything simply. For example, in the first series, I know there is everything one must know. It is a very interesting book. Everything is there. All that exists, all that has existed, all that can exist. The beginning, the end, all the secrets of the creation of the world, all is there. But one must understand, and to understand depends on one's individuality. The more man has been instructed in a certain way, the more he can see. Now find a way to put your attention on understanding all of the first series. This will be your task. And it is a good way to fix a real attention. If you can put real attention on the first series, you can have a real attention in life. In the first series there is everything. I have said it, even how to make an omelette. Then there was a joke with another man about tobacco and how to dry it, and then about rice powder and gunpowder, and about the French language, which is rich only in the insults between taxi drivers. Madame de Salzman said, "Really now, has no one got anything more to say?" This passage has been used by certain people to claim that there are no methods in Gurdjieff's teaching, which is complete nonsense. Gurdjieff says there's no method and then gives the man a method immediately afterwards, and by the air of joviality and response from Madame de Salzman, you can see that it was not a very serious meeting, and the guy Gurdjieff was talking to couldn't even read a book. Gurdjieff never turned anyone away, really. There is always a group who does that. They pick out certain words that mean they don't have to do anything. It's nothing more than self-calming. Much of human life today is in fact self-calming. I was washing some glasses out in the sink a couple of days ago, and I was sensing with my hands, trying to feel that character that does the washing up for me with my hands. It suddenly dawned on me that my body cannot see. My body, my moving center, cannot see, and that the habits that it knows and the way that it knows is from the fingertips, from sensing. It feels things. For the body or for the moving center, that is like seeing at its level. It feels its way, but it cannot see. It does not have vision. It separates the centers very clearly. That which cannot see is the moving center. That which does see is above the line. In the same way, I saw a picture of a cell in the human body. It has feelers on the outside that can feel things. One part reaches out to feel the outside world, and then the information is brought inside the cell. The cell is the microcosmos, as Gurdjieff said. We are not microcosmos. We are tritocosmos. We are much bigger structures. We are kingdoms. Within us is a kingdom. Or, as Evola would say, we are a kingdom within a kingdom. If I move on to the scale of a society or a people, they deploy naturally into several castes. Traditionally, they were the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaisyas and the Shudras, meaning the priests, and then the warriors, and then the merchants. Above the priests is the higher world, and below the Shudras is the lower world, which is beyond the boundaries of this plane. Western society is falling apart. I remember going to a bowling alley down in Brighton once, and I could see that this was a working class recreation. It is part of their cycle. It is part of the things that they do, and it is very good. They are a very well regulated circuit of life. The middle class has a different circuit. They feel different things, read different books, they have a different work, they have different leaders. And then the upper class, whether it exists or not, once again, the nobility has a different circuit. And each circuit has its own rhythm. And they protect and support each other. They trust each other and they deliver for each other. That is a living and stratified society. When society fragments through the cracks, in the same way, the entire society can move up to a higher level. Let's say it was a Christian society or a rising society, and the entire society starts to process different kind of feeling energy. They have different ideas, different moods. There's a rising feeling. There is a sense of meaning because something is flowing down into them. This cohort can only move up and down very slowly, and normally they are pioneering people who gradually bring something new in and lift it up, or alternatively pollute it and pull it down. Life is completely open. And if anybody would experience it, they would explode from the energy of life. Our human life, our human structure and our societies create a kind of conduit where we can work with the materials of life in a limited way. We must respect the society, our people, the cultures, and the what is known races. These are the natural divisions, each one processing different types of energy. Any attempt to destroy these things will kill our species. Now, before I move on to chapter 17 of Fragments, I will just say that I came out of church the other day and the priest had given me a particularly large chunk of the host. And I was really alive inside. And I could see that I was experiencing the fourth body. I also felt that feeling of clarity after communion is quite similar to being in the zone, as they say. And when you are in the zone, in fact, you appear to be feeling the edge of a higher body. But because it just happens here and there, there's not much you can do with it. There's no practice associated with it. Sometimes people just fall into it and try to keep it going, and then it fades away. Okay, from Fragments then. A man will never attain the necessary intensity by himself. If you have observed yourself in a proper way, you will agree with this. If a man sets himself a task of some sort, he very quickly begins to be indulgent with himself. He tries to accomplish his task in the easiest way, and so on. This is not work. In work, only super efforts are counted, that is, beyond the normal, beyond the necessary. Ordinary efforts are not counted. What is meant by a super effort? Someone asked. It means an effort beyond the effort that is necessary to achieve a given purpose, said G. Imagine that I have been walking all day and am very tired. The weather is bad, it is raining and cold. In the evening I arrive home. I have walked perhaps 25 miles. In the house there is supper. It is warm and pleasant, but instead of sitting down to supper, I go out into the rain again, decide to walk another 2 miles along the road and then return home. This would be a super effort. While I was going home, it would simply be an effort, and this does not count. I was on my way home. The cold, hunger, the rain, all this made me walk. In the other case, I walk because I myself decided to do so. This kind of super effort becomes still more difficult when I do not decide upon it myself, but obey a teacher, who at an unexpected moment requires from me to make fresh efforts when I have decided that efforts for the day are over. If a man were able to work on himself, everything would be very simple and schools would be unnecessary. But he cannot, and the reasons for this lie very deep in his nature. I will leave for the moment his insincerity with himself, the perpetual lies he tells himself, and so on, and take only the division of the centers. This alone makes independent work on himself impossible for a man. You must understand that the three principal centers, the thinking, the emotional, the moving, are connected together, and in a normal man, they are always working in unison. This unison is what presents the chief difficulty in work on oneself. What is meant by this unison? It means that a definite work of the thinking center is connected with a definite work of the emotional and moving centers. That is to say, that a certain kind of thought is inevitably connected with a certain kind of emotion, and with a certain kind of movement or posture. One evokes the other. That is, a certain kind of emotion evokes certain movements or postures and certain thoughts. Everything is connected and one thing cannot exist without another thing. Now imagine that a man decides to think in a new way, but he feels in the old way. Imagine that he dislikes Mr. R. This dislike of Mr. R immediately arouses old thoughts, and he forgets his decision to think in a new way. Or let us suppose that he is accustomed to smoking cigarettes while he is thinking. This is a moving habit. He decides to think in a new way. He begins to smoke a cigarette, but he thinks in the old way without noticing it. The habitual movement of lighting a cigarette has turned his thought round to the old tune. You must remember that a man can never break this accordance by himself. Another man's will is necessary, and a stick is necessary. Then work on the moving center can only be properly organized in a school. As I have already said, the wrong independent or automatic work of the moving center deprives the other centers of support, and they involuntarily follow the moving center. Often, therefore, the sole possibility of making the other centers work in a new way is to begin with the moving center, that is, with the body. A body which is lazy, automatic, and full of stupid habits stops any kind of work. But theories exist, said one of us, that a man ought to develop the spiritual and moral side of his nature, and that his body will follow. Now I'll stop there. It's interesting to see that guy jump in as soon as physical work is suggested. He was probably a European or an English. But the momentum of Western culture can no longer be kept by words. The momentum has completely exhausted itself. And besides, isn't moving the body beautiful after all? Didn't Jason travel along the leagues to get the golden fleece? One last piece. The idea of the necessity of relaxing was not actually a new one, but Gurdjieff's explanation that relaxing the muscles of the body should begin with the muscles of the face was quite new to me. I'd never come across this in books on yoga or in literature on physiology. Okay, thanks for listening. Take care.